Welcome to Process to Perform, helping you harness your potential on the way to greatness. I'm your host, Mike Wall. Before we get started, just want to thank you for listening in. I understand there is over 800,000 podcasts in the world today, so the fact that you've chosen this one, and I really appreciate. Obviously, I hope it is of value to you. This is certainly something that's near and dear to my heart. I spent probably the greater part of my adult life trying to kind of live this through and understand it a little bit better. The last 4 or 5 years working with professional athletes again in the NFL, working with amateur athletes, trying to put some congruent language together to talk about this a little bit better and allow myself to express the words that are in my head so that hopefully they're a benefit to you, your family, whether you're an athlete, a parent, or a coach. So for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about non-negotiable traits, things such as competitive mindset, confidence, presence, coachability, the willingness to take short-term pain for long-term gain. These are all character traits that every athlete must identify and foster within themselves in order to build their master of craft pyramid. We moved on from there to technique. I like to use the equation improved technique improves decision-making, which leads to an improved execution of scheme. Well, how do we improve decision-making? There's kind of two ways we talked about last week. The first is from a brain standpoint, your brain power is being split between external awareness, internal processes, and action. What we want to do is automate our technique, become a master technician and automate that technique in order to shut down or reduce the amount of internal processes necessary to lead to action, so we can go right from external awareness, so what we see, feel, smell, sense, etc., right into action. So it's a read and react standpoint. That's that flow state that you've always heard about, and we want to get to that point as soon as possible, as often as possible. The second way is very simply, with improved technique, you can get to places faster to digest more information. So we use the example of an NFL wide receiver running a 15-yard dig route. The better they are at running that route, the faster they get there, the better they can go through a square cut and explode out and get their hands up and their eyes around. They're going to be able to do a number of things. Disassociate from the defensive back, get their head around to potentially react to a bad ball thrown by the quarterback, and then read their new external surroundings so they can make better decisions. And so now we want to ask the question, what are the ancillary benefits of going through the process of becoming a master technician? Really, this conversation could be all about mental toughness and everything that goes under that umbrella. But I want to break it down into a couple different components. The number one ancillary benefit: you are earning the right to play well. This is the number one source of pride for me. You have earned the right to have a good game. The competitor inside you has been given free rein to dominate your next confrontation because you have put in the work required to arrive at the starting whistle, knowing you did everything you could to prepare for the encounter. When you know you have outprepared your opponent, this is a huge source of confidence and pride. Many professionals, including myself, feel like imposters when they arrive in the top athletic leagues. The athletes are all exceptional and are already seasoned professionals, while you're coming in somewhat unprepared for whatever's next. And so I entered the NFL after one season starting in college as an offensive lineman. And I was at an option offense school, so I had no idea how to pass protect. And I'd never really been in an NFL three-point stance. And so now I'm having to face legends like Reggie White, Santana Dotson, Gilbert Brown every day in practice. And they're asking me to protect this 3-time MVP from future Hall of Famers like John Randall and Warren Sapp week in and week out. I was completely out of my league from a physical standpoint, experience-wise, and early on, especially technically. Having said that, practicing at full speed and putting in extra time to get better was something that had gotten me through college. And as I looked across the NFL landscape, I realized that many of the players in the league were not willing to put in the time or focused effort that I was. The dirty secret is that many technical requirements of any sport are not things to be done walking down the sidewalk. You have to put in a significant amount of effort to properly practice pass protection or tackling as examples. And what that means to players that are a little behind the curve is that if they are willing to spend the extra time and effort, they can catch up to and possibly pass by their peer group. And this act in itself fosters an incredible amount of confidence and pride. And so this is a roundabout way to describe mental toughness, something that we hear about in the media all the time. My tenets of mental toughness are best described by the 3 tenets of pride, confidence, and discipline. Pride, practice at a high intensity level. So I always want to go out there and practice at a higher intensity level than everybody else. I feel like if you're practicing at game speed, then the game's not going to be too fast for you. Now, this can mean a ton of different things. Not necessarily. It doesn't always have to be physically the most intense situation, because sometimes the practice doesn't call for that. But some combination, some dials that are turned are, cognitive, emotional, and physical. You have to be able to turn those dials week in and week out in order to keep on growing. Number 2, confidence. Believe that what you're doing matters. Believe that the process of improving yourself does prepare you for a Sunday or game day, does prepare you to go out there and you've earned the right to have that good game. Believe that that is a differentiator between you and the person that you're trying to beat out, or you and that weekly opponent. Make sure that it matters to you. And the third one, discipline. Be the same guy. Be the same guy every day. Don't be volatile. When, especially as young athletes, I see this with my kids all the time. Kids are very volatile. It's a natural thing. It's hard for parents sometimes to understand that, but you're going to get a different version of your child, or at least a different version of the outcome, almost every single day, because there's so much going on inside their developing bodies. And as we get older, you would expect that volatility is going to go down. But you have to make a concerted effort to reduce that volatility every day if your expectation is long-term development. There's a performance expert, Wayne Goldsmith, and he's also described mental toughness in a similar fashion. So I would encourage everyone to watch him on YouTube. I think he does an exceptional job of describing mental toughness as something that you can earn, not something that you either have or do not have. It's not something you're born with. It's something you have to earn. You have to earn it on a regular basis. So I love the stuff he has to say. Go check him out on YouTube. If we think about technique as the cornerstone of our development, then intuitively, many positive ancillary benefits can be reinforced through the process of becoming a master technician. Things like attention to detail, curiosity, and discipline, just to name a few. But I'd like to discuss 2 of the most relevant to today's sports climate, which are habit creation and routine formation. Now, creating habits is not always easy. And as coaches, we try to create frictionless environments to help our players achieve new goals. But from a player's perspective, the discipline required to stay focused and on task when improving a technical area of opportunity. I'm air quoting area of opportunity. That's another way to say deficiency. I just like saying area of opportunity. It feels more positive to me. But that carries into all these different aspects of your life. And so when you think about people you grew up watching, I always think of like Jerry Rice and Larry Bird, or the stars of today, Steph Curry's of the world, Cristiano Ronaldo's. These special athletes, through focused effort and discipline, have created habits that allow them to perform at a higher level than even the elite of the elite. And that's something that we should celebrate. We should be celebrating as a society the monotony that the athletes, these really elite level athletes, put themselves through, because habit formation is a monotonous approach to life. In order to create the habits that propel you to kind of an elite level athlete, you have to spend hours upon hours upon hours of going through the same movement patterns in what we like to call dedicated practice. Not practice, but dedicated practice, in order to continue to improve and grow as an athlete. Cristiano Ronaldo is always a great example for me, because he's a guy who has dominated the world soccer landscape for over a decade. And between him and Lionel Messi, they're the top 2 players for as long as I can remember watching soccer, at least. And while a lot of people that say Messi's, by the grace of God, he was born with a soccer ball on his left foot, I'm sure he has a tremendous work ethic. But Cristiano Ronaldo is kind of the other side of the coin, where yes, he has some athletic ability, no question about it, but he is legendary for his work ethic. He is legendary for the amount of time he has put in, whether it's the habits formed in the technical side, which he's arguably the best in the world, or his recovery routine modalities, or his general strength and conditioning routines. He's legendary for the amount of work he's willing to put in, and it's something that's to be cherished, because it's not the sexy and romantic lifestyle that you see on Instagram or on television. That is a very monotonous lifestyle, but obviously leads to the success that everyone is hoping for. A final thought on habits. When we think about habits in the process of developing a technical mastery, they're really the same thing. Habits are physical acts that we have automated inside our system. And we've been talking about, from a technical standpoint, when you're your best, when you're able to read and react, is when you've automated that physical process inside your mind, so that those internal processes of your mind are shut down, or that power is shifted to your external awareness so you can read and react. So habit formation and technical development are really two sides of the same coin in my mind. Another thing that the aforementioned athletes have in common is that they understand the power of routine formation. So when you create a routine, which is essentially an individual schedule, you create opportunities for athletes to control their variables and therefore take control of their lives and their athletic careers. And so we can start very broadly looking at, let's look at a high school basketball player that is a straight A student, and if she wants to go to play college basketball, so she's doing all this extra training. She has technical work. She has weights and running twice a week, but she also has 2 tests on Friday, and she has a study group on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Well, if you can schedule out all the things she has to do, if you take all kind of the mental strain off of this athlete and schedule out when we're going to work weights, when we're going to do our technical, when we're going to do our speed training, and kind of work those around the rest of the schedule, including the regular team practice. When you can do these things, you promote productivity, you promote confidence, and you're allowing athletes to focus on what matters most in that moment. Routines ensure that we take the focus time needed to create the good habits that lead to improved in-game ability. And so by shifting that kind of anxiety or anything that's weighing on you from a mental standpoint, understand that you have all these things to do and not enough time to do it, when we can broadly look at those routines, it helps us focus on what's important in that moment. Now, we can start with a weekly routine, and what I do with professional athletes is we'll start with a weekly routine and we'll go right down to that daily, and we'll start drilling into, okay, there's 25 minutes of technical work I want to get in for you during the day. When are we going to get that in? You have 15 minutes before practice, 10 minutes after practice. You have nothing during those times. Perfect opportunity for you to get better. You're going to be warming up, so you will have X amount of minutes to go through a warm-up session as far as that pre-practice work that we can do that you don't have to be full speed, but you can just be detailed and disciplined. And then at the end of practice, we can maybe be ramped up a little more because you have a sweat and you've already been warmed up and you've been working through it. You can spend 10 to 15 minutes working on ankle mobility. There's some hip issues that you need to work on in between meetings or times in the locker room, etc. But when we get to that point, when we get to a really drilled down, disciplined player routine, when they go to a spot, there's that you're creating that frictionless environment again. They have no reason not to be successful. So as we discussed earlier, there's many things that go under the umbrella of professionalism, but I wanted to focus on 2 that I think are most relevant to the current climate in professional sports and amateur sports, which are habit formation and routine development. Next week, we're going to talk about the process of learning. What's going on in your brain as you are spending dedicated practice learning a new skill? It's fascinating stuff. I'm just going to give you obviously the abbreviated meathead version, but it's definitely worth looking into. I'm excited about talking about it. Everybody that I've talked to regarding this podcast, this is kind of one of the things that they've been looking forward to. So we're going to do that. We're going to do a little bit of a gut check with me on this whole idea of, if technique is the cornerstone of your development, can we give some evidence that would suggest that is true, either scientifically or anecdotally. So I have a couple of examples for you, or things to think about at least, to kind of reinforce the idea with yourself as an athlete, if you're a parent or a coach, understanding kind of why this is so important, and giving some real life examples of how this makes a huge difference. So again, thank you so much for listening. I understand you have hundreds of thousands of options out there on your drive home. Hopefully you're working out right now, actually, or working out with one of your athletes. And reminder, this podcast is for you, the audience. This is for players, coaches, and parents. So if you have a question, I will answer it online, given that I'm allowed to. Please email me at info@unrivaledsystems.com, or hit me on Twitter at Baldmarauder, BALDMARAUDER. Looking forward to it. Thanks again for listening. Bye.